Greetings, brothers and sisters. Welcome to the weekly Mormon News Roundup. I'm your humble host, Steve Ace, and that's talent on loan from Kolob. Every week, my crew and I, we ruminate on the great and spacious beehive, so thanks so much for joining us to discuss the contemporary events in Mormonism. Today is episode 109, and it's March 4th, 2024. There's BYU controversies galore, and you're not going to believe what we found out. There's an emeritus general authority who has endorsed a Republican candidate, and that's caused quite a stir. And finally, we're going to give you some Tim Ballard, the Sound of Freedom hero. There's some more lawsuits, and there's a lot of juicy details. If you want to get in touch with me, I'm at mormonnewsroundup.org. You can send me an email to kolob@mormonnewsroundup.org. I'd like to welcome onto my program my fabulous co-host and the Mormon podcasting legend, Rebecca Biblioteca. Rebecca, how's it going?
It's going great. So nice of you to say that. That's a very fabulous introduction. Thank you.
It's great to have you on the program. We'd also invite a special guest here, the Uber Mormon, Cody. How's it going, Cody?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Hey, we're doing tremendous. You're known as the Uber Mormon. Where did that name come from?
Came from Friedrich Nietzsche. Very nerdy. His Ubermensch was like the next step in human evolution. The best thing that you could be was an Ubermensch, but if you were born a human, it was too late for you. But the Ubermensch is like the thing that goes beyond humanity. So the Uber Mormon is the thing that absorbs all the wisdom that does come from Mormonism, but then still grows up beyond it and does its own thing.
And now, who exactly are you and what are you all about?
Great question. And I ask myself this every day in the mirror from like 3 inches from the mirror, you know, like, who are you? What are you about? So I started my channel because I was taking a lot of human development courses. I'm a psychology major. I'm working to become a therapist one day. And a lot of the stuff that I was learning in my classes, I thought would be cool to have a Mormon spin on them. And I wasn't seeing those videos that I wanted to see in the Mormon world, or ex-Mormon world, I guess is what we would call it. So I decided I've worked with cameras before. I used to be a film major, so I had all the equipment I needed. And now I had kind of content ideas that I was getting from school. So I just decided whenever a video pops into my head, I'll make it. And then that's the channel. So I'm not a good content creator at like being consistent, because I really am like, is something calling to be made right now? I'll make it. Otherwise, I kind of just disappear.
I feel like you are a post-Mormon perfect storm. You're a therapist with a film background. I mean, you were born to podcast. This is incredible.
I know.
And I hadn't seen a lot of your content, but knowing that I was going to be able to be on with you, I started watching, and it's excellent. What has the reception been? I bet you get a lot of comments, and I bet people really, really love it.
A lot of people really love it, and a lot of people really hate it, which is a good thing. Mitzi Shore, she's like famous in the comedy world. She's Pauly Shore's mom. She once was talking to somebody, and she said, if you want to be a star, you need 50% of people to love you, and you need the other 50% not to be apathetic. You need them to hate you. You need the attention. I'm cool with it. I get it. I'm attacking things that, I mean, I don't think I'm attacking per se, but sometimes I get a little snarky about people's deeply held beliefs. And so I can understand some of the clapbacks for sure.
Yeah, we created this thumbnail to go along with this episode, how to be an Uber Mormon. How do you like that thumbnail? That's supposed to be me on the left. That's Rebecca. Rebecca, you're looking good. How is that close, or what do you think, guys?
No, it tells me that AI
looks like
realizes I haven't been out in the sun and my hair looks too brown. We need to redo it when it's July, and I've been sitting outside. So it's great though. You do wonderful things with AI. You really do. You're great.
I love it.
Oh, very nice. That's a very kind words. I appreciate that. And if you didn't say anything nice, I'd cut it out so it all works out perfectly well. That's for sure. Now, let's jump into the news this week. We've got a big week on tap here. And the first thing that really caught my eye and is really causing a storm out there is BYU Idaho has disinvited a music professor from speaking at a jazz festival after he aired his disbelief in the LDS Church. And of course, I taught at BYU for a long time. So did Rebecca. So this is something that's near and dear to our hearts. Now, he wasn't giving a theological discourse on the ins and outs of Mormonism. He was just there to mostly play and lecture at a jazz festival. But because he has renounced his LDS faith, they disinvited him and banned him from the campus. Now, I created a video that goes along with this, and if we could get your first take here, Cody, and then we'll go to Rebecca after this, about Ryan Nielsen getting the boot from the church.
In the hallowed halls of academia, a professor's voice is silenced, casting a shadow over the principle of academic freedom. The case in point is Ryan Nielsen, a music professor at Utah Valley University who was disinvited from speaking and performing at Brigham Young University, Idaho, due to his public statements about his faith transition. This event is not just a single isolated incident. It marks a significant departure from the norms of academic discourse, a deviation from the path of intellectual freedom and openness. Nielsen, known for his dedication and passion for music, was not allowed to share his insights and knowledge with a community that once embraced him. Despite the widespread support from his colleagues and students, the decision to ban him was upheld by the university's president. The decision to ban Nielsen, a respected figure in his field, stands as a stark reminder of the challenges faced by those who dare to voice their individual beliefs. The response to Nielsen's disinvitation was swift and resolute. A chorus of voices rose in protest, each echoing the same sentiments of disapproval and disappointment. Colleagues and students alike rallied behind Nielsen, their solidarity manifesting in a T-shirt campaign launched in his honor. The T-shirts, emblazoned with a simple yet powerful message, became a symbol of the burgeoning movement in support of academic freedom. Observers of the situation were not silent either. They cast a critical eye on the university's actions, voicing their concerns about the potential repercussions on open dialogue and intellectual discourse within the hallowed halls of academia. This incident, they argued, was not an isolated event confined to one institution, but rather a symptom of a larger, more pervasive issue. The controversy surrounding Nielsen's disinvitation has permeated the academic sphere, igniting a heated debate about the extent to which free speech should be protected in educational institutions. It has forced us to confront uncomfortable questions about where we draw the line between individual expression and institutional prerogatives. The waves caused by this event have washed over the academic world, sparking a debate about the boundaries of free speech within educational institutions. The incident at BYU Idaho is more than just a single professor's disinvitation. It is a reflection of the struggles faced by academia in preserving intellectual freedom. This situation is not an isolated incident, but rather a symptom of broader challenges that threaten the core tenets of academic discourse. When institutions of higher learning choose to silence voices that challenge established norms or question prevailing beliefs, they risk creating an environment that stifles intellectual growth and hinders the pursuit of truth. It's not just about one professor being denied the opportunity to speak. It is about the potential implications of such actions on the overall health of academic freedom. Imagine a world where only the voices that conform are heard, where dissenting opinions are squashed, and where questioning is discouraged. This is a world that impedes progress and stifles innovation. It is a world that fails to foster the critical thinking skills that are the lifeblood of academic endeavor and societal advancement. The bittersweet visit of Ryan Nielsen to the BYU Idaho campus underscores the personal impact of such actions. This was the place of deep personal significance to him, a place where he once belonged, where he was once heard. His farewell to the campus was not just a farewell to a physical location, but to a community that he was once a part of, a community that has chosen to silence his voice. The implications of such actions extend beyond the individual. They reverberate through the halls of academic institutions, sending a chilling message to those who might dare to question, to challenge, to think differently. They create a climate of fear that can deter the free exchange of ideas, a fundamental pillar of academia. In an era where the free exchange of ideas is more critical than ever, the story of Ryan Nielsen serves as a sobering reminder of the constant vigilance required to protect academic freedom.
Right here, I'm feeling like, obviously, since this guy isn't a true believing Mormon anymore, obviously he can't play trumpet, right? So that disqualifies him from being a good teacher. On a more serious note, this is thought control at the very worst, and it's a slap in the face for a meritocracy at best, because doing this in such a public way, you're telling, let's zoom in just on jazz students for a moment. You're telling jazz students that, let's say that somebody really wanted him to be their professor because he's really good. Now they're just going to go to a different school. Now you're going to hurt the types of students that want to come to BYU. And it's just going to become, are you Mormon first? We don't care about anything else, which, I don't know, it's just going to make your school struggle.
Yeah, Rebecca, think about this. Every single week at BYU Provo, I'm not sure about BYU Idaho, they have a forum, which is where they have a secular lecture that's usually by a distinguished guest on various secular subjects. And there's no problem for those individuals to give those. So why is there a problem when Ryan Nielsen is going to do a jazz festival when there's plenty of people who aren't Mormons running around BYU all the time?
Yeah, that's the problem. It's fine if you belong to another denomination. You're a Catholic trumpet player, a Hindu trumpet player, a Muslim trumpet player. But if you were once a Mormon and a Mormon no more, then it's a problem. Once you have stepped away, that's when it becomes an issue. And I have to say, in your wonderful video where it says, imagine a world where free speech is squelched and free expression. Well, I don't have to imagine that world. That world exists more and more at all of the BYUs, Idaho, Provo, and Hawaii. They are just doubling down on this idea, and the PR, it just can't get any worse. I mean, I feel like this is going to blow up. I think we've only just seen the tip of the iceberg on this. Do they not see where this could go? Did they have to do this? The PR, the negative PR is going to be off the charts.
There's already been a major shakeup at BYU Idaho with regards to having to toe the line on LGBTQ issues, that they have extra questions for faculty members there. The amount of academic freedom that you're given at the BYUs, in particular in BYU Idaho, is extremely limited. And how much of a snowflake student do you have to be able to not have a lecture by somebody who's not a true believing Mormon? You want to talk about woke culture invading? I mean, come on. The entire purpose of academia and a college experience is to experience different ideas. And that's the whole point here, is that he wasn't going to have a different idea. It literally says his t-shirt, all I wanted to do was talk about jazz. He wasn't going to talk about Joseph Smith in a rock and a hat, and he wasn't going to talk about gospel topics essays. But even just because we have to have music people who are true believers now, I mean, the amount of people that we're going to be able to invite onto the BYU campuses eventually is going to be minuscule.
If the point of a university experience is to prepare students for the workforce, I mean, are you telling these students that they should only work for people who are Mormon in the future? It's just going to end with the university ending. So like, just let the students get the best training from the best people.
Think about President Nelson. I'll give you the last say on this article, Rebecca. In his last general conference, what was his overall message? Never take counsel from those who don't believe. And apparently a lot of members said, well, let's never take religious counsel. No, that's not what we're seeing. Never take any counsel whatsoever, whether it's your jazz musician or whether you're going to the podiatrist. We need to have an echo chamber in the BYUs that is just deafening, and we can't take the slightest possibility that our precious little students might be exposed to somebody who's not a believer, and we literally have to ban him and kick him off of campus, even though he taught there for many years, is very popular with the students and faculty members. I used to teach at BYU in music. I know his reputation. I taught at UVU as well. This has just really got me fired up. Can I give you the last word on this one?
Well, I do agree with the Uber Mormon. I agree that it's a disservice to students at these universities that they can't experience what the world is going to be like when they actually go out into the world, because they are going to work with people of different points of view, different orientations. And I have heard anecdotal stories of BYU students having trouble in that way because they've never been exposed to anything like that. So it's a complete disservice. It completely goes against what a university experience is supposed to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Now you can find the Mormon News Roundup. We're on Instagram, we're on TikTok. You can also find the Mormonish podcast on TikTok, on Instagram. You can find Uber Mormon on YouTube. Let us know your thoughts about what should happen with Ryan Nielsen. Now, this isn't the only issue that has happened in BYU. We got a lot of BYU stuff happening this week, guys. Here, first of all, there was a Truth and Reconciliation conference at BYU that was held just a couple of days ago of the BYU Slavery Project, and this was very interesting here. That had keynote speaker Matthew Mason, and they talked about the racist history, especially of BYU, and how there was a very limited amount of Black students who were allowed to be enrolled. There was a number of different sessions that went along with this, and there happened to be a Mormonland podcast that kind of dovetailed on that talks about after a history of blackface and racist LDS policies, in particular at BYU, that they've now reached a fork in the road. In fact, the school's first Black graduate who was not LDS earned his degree way back in 1939. Did y'all listen to that Mormonland podcast? Are you tracking this? What were your thoughts on BYU and the fork in the road with regards to race?
Yeah, I listened to that podcast. I found it really interesting as they were getting to the end. The interviewer was asking Grace, what are your takeaways of BYU's history? What do you think about the whole thing in its entirety? And she said, there's been, like, one of the things that was positive was there was actually a graduate who was there a lot sooner than we thought. How he arrived to Provo was a really interesting story. Basically, he was from New Orleans. He heard about the BYU football team on the radio. He was like, that sounds great. He went to BYU for his master's. But when he got into Provo, a cop stopped him and said, you can't be here. This is Provo. This is where we make white people. But I'm not going to kick you out, but you do have to sleep tonight in the jail, was basically like what he was told. The next day he went to BYU. They came up with some special arrangement, and he ended up living in a hotel for 2 years while he got his master's degree. She said that's a positive thing. There were people there before. Also, BYU was just as racist as every other university during those years, with all the people doing blackface. She mentioned Othello specifically and a performance that involved blackface there. But what I always find weird whenever people say things like BYU was just as bad as the surrounding universities at that time, I always think, why wasn't it better? Like, why are we always right with the culture or a little behind the culture? It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, Rebecca, is it possible for BYU to move past its racist history, number one, without renaming the university, Brigham Young University, and also really dealing with these in a more substantial way, including apologies and things like that? Is a couple of conferences, is a couple of news exhibits, is that going to be enough for BYU to move past its bad history?
No, I think it's going to take some serious acknowledgement and then apology. And those are two things that the church has flat out said they don't do. I know that there have been in the news lately, the debates between Brigham Young and Orson Pratt have been translated, made available. We dropped a podcast on Friday about this, and it's really rough to listen to. It's very difficult to read these words or hear these words read that your prophet, Brigham Young, is saying. We almost thought of not releasing the podcast after we taped it because we thought this is very difficult, but it's really important. That's part of acknowledgement. There has to be a sense of admitting what happened, putting it in a proper context, and then apologizing and moving forward. I think that's the only way it's going to happen. I will say I like to see the Black menaces on campus because they push the envelope. They move the needle. They get students thinking. If you've ever watched any of their videos, you can see some of the students who have been in a bubble, as we talked about in our last segment. Their minds are just kind of like, oh, yeah. And that's what needs to happen. So I know the campus had taken steps to kind of curb what the Black menaces could do, but I applaud them. And I think that kind of pushing the envelope may lead, hopefully someday, to some acknowledgement and apology. And that's what we need.
Now, I believe you were releasing those new episodes on Tuesday night on the Mormonish podcasting channel. Is that correct? Is that when we can expect
we release live on Tuesday night, and on Friday, which will have been the prior Friday to when this is released, is when we have released our episode. It's called Servitude and Slavery, the Orson Pratt Brigham Young debates. And by the time this airs, which is Sunday night, we may have been forced to take it down. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's an interesting chapter. And although it's very difficult to work through, it's all part of that acknowledgement, I feel.
This is a trifecta here. We have another scandal, really, that's coming out of BYU Pathways that hit like a thunderbolt this week. This is from Peggy Fletcher Stack of the Salt Lake Tribune, and she tweeted this out. An education company launched by BYU Pathways head and two BYU buddies was found guilty of extortion. What do you think of the company which claimed to help shoplifters and the ruling? So first of all, the BYU Pathways program has something like 40,000 people who are enrolled all across the world, mostly online, in which they take their degree-seeking basic bachelor's degree and other certifications in order to have an education. It's very inexpensive, and the church subsidizes this to a high degree. So that's basically what the Pathways program is. And if you look at this article here, this is crazy here. Quote, his restorative justice company was fined. It broke the civil law. The firm was shut down. But Brian Aston, who is the head of the president of the BYU Pathways program, he landed on his feet when a friend and fellow Harvard alum, Clark Gilbert, who oversees the LDS Church's education system, called him up. Wow, this is absolutely amazing. Can you believe what is going on with the Pathways program here?
Yeah, this is absolutely making waves. Just a few hours ago, I had a faithful friend who participated in the Pathways program text me. And the Pathways program is often for moms that perhaps got married while they were at BYU, had kids, and didn't finish that degree. This is the case of my friend. And she texted me about this. She goes, have you heard of this? I think you should podcast about this. And I said, I will. But yeah, this is just another situation where who are these gentlemen that are in these positions of power in the church? If you read through the article, when his company was doing this, which is basically extortion and shakedown of people that were caught shoplifting, they would have a contract with the store, where the store would call them instead of the police, and this company would offer the shoplifter a chance to enroll in a program, pay some money, not have to be put into the legal system. The store itself would get a kickback. I mean, it's just simple shakedown and extortion. I believe if we look through the article and at the dates, he was also a mission president right about this time. So here's someone who's a mission president. I think it was in Texas. And then when that comes to an end and his company kind of comes to an end, he's got a friend to reach out a hand. Hey, good old boy, let's just, enter the Pathways program. I mean, if this doesn't show you what kind of good old boys network it is, I don't know what does.
I don't have these kind of friends in high places. So if my company was shut down, it was fined, and it was completely told to be a sham, and it was basically an extortion, nobody's going to call me up to be the president of a major university. But I guess that's what happens if you got high Mormons in high places, right, Cody?
I always try and look for the human aspects of everything. I try and have like as much compassion and grace as I could possibly have for people, which is probably a good thing and a bad thing sometimes. But, on its face, offering people a way to rehabilitate, offering people a way to learn sounds nice. Keeping them out of the legal system sounds nice. But the thing that really made it hard for me to empathize or sympathize with this company failing was a part at the lower, kind of in the middle of the article, when I think the Attorney General of California or something like that was saying that they were like really using kind of sketchy, salesy, like really pushing these people to accept their course and pay the $400 or $500. And I just can't like rehabilitation's great, giving people second chances is great, but using pushy sales tactics to make money off of giving people second chances, it gets really blurry right there. And I can't support that or feel good about that anymore.
And that's the question, is what is going to happen to Brian Ashton now that this has been made public? And why was there no investigation before this? I found a rather remarkable, if you Google him on YouTube, one of his talks that comes up is called Happiness, Deceit, and the Small Things, where he talks about it's the small things in life that you do. If you do them right, then God will bless you, and that we should avoid deceit in every way that we can. And if so, then we will truly be happy. The irony of that is going to be very thick. And you wonder, will there be any accountability? If you think back to the SEC fine, it was almost exactly 1 year ago, February of 2023, where the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was fined $1 million, and the Ensign Peak Advisors was also fined $4 million. That was a civil penalty. There wasn't anything criminal along with that. And that's the same thing as Mr. Brian Ashton's company. It was all civil. And guess what happened to the individuals who were fined by the SEC? There was no accountability in the church whatsoever for these actions. Will there be any accountability for President Ashton? What do you think?
Probably not.
Nobody in their right mind thinks that there's going to be any accountability whatsoever. Now, if somebody on the BYU campus holds hands with someone of the same sex, they're subject to being kicked out. If somebody has a smallest sip of wine at BYU Idaho, they're kicked out. If you express non-belief in any church standards, then you will be banned forever if you were once a Mormon. But if you run a company that has incredibly harmful practices that preys on people in some of the most vulnerable conditions who are facing jail time, who are facing criminal actions, and you extort, that's what the filing said, that he extorted money from these people. Not only will there not be held accountable, you'll be promoted to the head of the BYU Pathways program just as long as you're friends with a rich and powerful Mormon. Any last thoughts here on the BYU Pathways president being found guilty of extortion?
Maybe that trumpet teacher should start a company like this, and then he can somehow graduate to the head of BYU.
Yeah, it's crazy who is held accountable around here and for what. It's
well,
just
a blind eye is always turned to corporate fraud, I feel. They just don't look at it. They just kind of think, oh, we had to do what we had to do. And that stems from the top. So a blind eye is turned.
Indeed, a blind eye has been turned. Okay, Rebecca, you've got our next article here. What's going on with the Lights Out for Save Wasatch Back Dark Skies lawsuit against Wasatch County, just released a couple of days with the Heber Valley Temple? What's going on? They're dropping the lawsuit? Say it isn't so.
No, this is really sad because Mormonish Podcast has been following the Heber Valley Temple and a similar situation in Cody where residents are just asking that the church follow the laws of the land. Don't try to change zoning. Don't try to get special privileges. Just build your temple where it would be appropriately zoned. So in Heber, for about a year, they've been fighting this. And of course, our friends there are part of Save Wasatch Back Dark Skies. And the county turned over the 20-year zoning requirement for low lighting and dark skies. Just like that, just the county, just like that. So the residents, and they used a limited, a limited use? No, a limited, oh my gosh, I can't remember the name of it now. The limited something agreement. Without voting, they simply overturned the ordinance. So our friends in Heber were trying to get it on the ballot that this agreement would at least be voted on so it could have a fair chance. Do the people want it? Yes. Do the people want it? No, they're going to vote. So they worked really hard through December and January to get signatures, and they did not get enough. A lot of people are seasonal there. They had some pushback from businesses where LDS people said, oh, we don't want those people taking signatures here. There was definitely a divide between active Mormons and others that were trying to get this passed. They didn't get enough signatures, and so it's not going on the ballot. The agreement's going to stand. They can start to build the temple. And unfortunately, our friends there in Heber, since they were funding this lawsuit out of their own pocket, eventually it's hard to stand up to a church that has billions and billions of dollars. So they did drop their lawsuit on January 20th. However, there is another lawsuit still in play, and these are some other residents that have some other concerns about the temple. And so it's still going forward, and it looks pretty strong. The church has asked to be made a defendant in these lawsuits, which is pretty typical if it's your property that's being affected. So we'll see how it plays out. But these are just wonderful people that out of their own pocket were trying to kind of protect their beautiful city and hold the church accountable to building somewhere where it's zoned appropriately. And unfortunately, they had to bow out. But there is another suit, so we'll see what happens. We can hope.
Cody, a couple things for you. First of all, people have found out that when it comes to church litigation, that the church is incredibly tenacious and that they will bankrupt a law firm in order to get their way. They will sue you for years. It'll tie up a bunch of your lawyers. And if you have a small or mid-sized law firm, you're tied up with hundreds of thousands of dollars in fees, and you may not even get a judgment at the end. That's why a lot of these lawsuits, they just basically give up. The Mormon church is just so incredibly powerful.
Don't we have enough temples? Light pollution is is already like, okay, if we're debating between putting up a fake thing that represents a celestial thing or just having a beautiful night sky, like you're literally comparing the essence of the thing, right? The fake facade veneer of the thing and the thing itself. You can't help but like have a sense of awe when you look up and you're in a spot with very little light pollution, and just you can see how bright the stars are, and it gives you perspective, and it connects you to the world in a weird way, and it's almost a religious experience, just the emotions that you feel. To ruin that because people need another place where they can just go outsource their time directly to nowhere, like it's just frustrating. I think of temples as just a tube where people's valuable only resource that will never go away just goes into nowhere, and it makes me sad.
Yeah, I mean, the church has announced or dedicated, I believe, 340 to 350 temples. I forget the exact number, and they have approximately 180 that are currently operating, including a number that are within driving distance of Heber Valley already. And let's not forget that the Heber Valley Temple, which is in a very small locality, is going to be a 90,000 square foot temple with a 300-foot spire on top. So this is not an average temple. This is an extraordinarily oversized, very large structure, not to mention the amount of water that it's going to consume, not to mention the fact that it is in the wrong place. This is not religious bigotry. This is people who want to preserve the character of the wonderful Heber Valley area. I've spent so much time there because I grew up in Salt Lake. I grew up in Provo. We used to go there all the time. It's a special place. It's a wonderful place. And there is a time and a place for religious structures. And in my mind, this isn't one of them. But the church knows. The church is going to litigate this in federal courts. They have already signaled that they bring it on. We want to get sued and go ahead and bring it on. And people have known that the church is so powerful. And when it goes to federal court and the church brings up there's exemptions for religious institutions to be able to build structures in the way that they want, it's going to supersede any city council objections or perhaps any state objections as well. This temple is probably going to get built. There's almost nothing that we can do to stop what I call the great and spacious beehive. Any last thoughts on Heber Valley here?
Yeah, I just have to say, for those that are going to say in the comments, anti-Mormons don't want the temple. Not true. The residents that we have befriended over the last year in Cody and Heber are of other faiths. They belong to other religious denominations, and they are more than happy to have a temple in their town. They welcome it, and they're excited. They just ask that the church follow the laws of the land, as their own article of faith says, and they just ask that you build it where it's zoned for, where it's appropriate. Don't try to use the legal system, or especially in Cody, oh my goodness, this coercion of pushing things through. And I have to, one last thing, say the funniest thing that came out of this, if there is a funny thing, in Heber, one of the women that we've been working with, she's like, I thought it was a religious building. And then I started looking into what a temple really is. She goes, do you know that most of your members can't even go inside? This is not a religious building. This needs to be zoned as a private club. She saw it very clearly.
There's a lot of truth to be said in that. Church boasts almost 18 million members, and there's probably only about 1 million active temple endowed adults who are the vast majority of who's going to be using this. And a lot of them are older or are in ill health. You're talking about just a few 100,000 people spread across the 400 or so temples that the church has announced. It's a very small amount of people. And like I said, the Timpanogos Temple is only about, 15 miles away. It's like a 30-minute drive. I mean, it's right there.
It's right there. I can see it out my window. It's lit up like a birthday cake. There it is.
Another big article that has come across my desk this week is the Republicans are under fire for a Utah fundraiser featuring Ken Paxton and a Mormon leader. Now, this really has developed a lot of traction. We're a tiny bit late on this one at the Mormon News Roundup, but this is going viral because of the association here. So Davis County had an annual so-called Lincoln Day dinner, and you're invited to come to the Texas Attorney General, Ken Paxton, and Elder Tad R. Callister, who is an emeritus member of the 70. And people were talking about, wait a minute here. If he is an official representative of the church, then I thought that the church wasn't supposed to endorse any candidates or any platforms. This has caused quite a bit of controversy. And I put together a video which gives basically an overview of why Tad Callister and Mr. Paxton's connection is so explosive. Is because of what's happening to Ken Paxton in Texas and a couple of other individuals who weighed in. This is a really juicy article, and it's got a lot of clicks here. Let me play this, and we'll start with you, Cody.
Religious title be used to imply political support? This question came to the fore, causing a stir in the Davis County Republican Party. In the early days of February, a fundraiser was announced featuring Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton and Elder Tad R. Callister, an emeritus leader in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The Davis County Republicans were soon under scrutiny, as the use of the term elder in their advertisements caused a controversy. Critics argued that the use of the religious title conflicted with the church's claims of political neutrality. The controversy surfaced midweek when a reporter from the Salt Lake Tribune shared a flyer promoting Paxton's appearance with Elder Tad R. Callister. Callister, a former Sunday School General President from 2014 to 2019, is an author and an influential figure in Utah faith communities. As the debate intensified, the Davis County Republicans shared an edited version of the flyer with the term elder removed. They stated that the use of elder in the initial version was an accident, and the version with the term was outdated. However, the unedited version remained on social media for the rest of the day. The critics saw this as more than a simple mistake. Jared Cook, a Latter-day Saint lawyer in Rochester, New York, argued that it was an attempt to imply church support for partisan causes. David Ostler, a former local church leader and mission president, added that it was inappropriate for general authorities, even emeritus ones, to be speakers at political fundraisers. The backdrop to this controversy is Paxton's impending trial on securities fraud charges, scheduled for April. Last May, Texas House Republicans voted overwhelmingly to impeach Paxton on corruption allegations, although he was later acquitted by the state Senate. Despite the church's disavowal of partisan ties, it is often aligned politically and legally with conservative causes, and its U.S. members are predominantly Republican. Callister has served on the board of the politically connected group, Utah Citizens for the Constitution, since being released as a church general authority. This isn't the first time Callister's involvement in politics raised questions about the church's neutrality. Last summer, church leaders endorsed his Founders Month campaign to members. The campaign, run by the group Why I Love America, included several high-profile right-wing activists, but no known Democrats, and invited Christian nationalist David Barton to speak in a church-owned building. After complaints of political involvement, the location was changed. In defense of their actions, some pointed out that Utah Democrats do similar things, citing social media posts identifying a black pastor elected to the state legislature. In essence, this controversy revolves around the intersection of faith and politics. It raises questions about the use of religious titles in political campaigns and the implications for institutions that claim political neutrality.
Okay, Cody, is there any issue with Tad Callister endorsing a Republican candidate?
If the church is trying to stay out of politics, which my whole life I've heard, we're not going to tell you who to vote for. We're just going to tell you to go follow your conscience or something along those lines. If you were like a current 70, then it would say you shouldn't even be involved in this. He is done being a 70. However, leaving the word elder in there, I don't know. I mean, they're obviously leaving it in there because they think they have something to gain from it. In my opinion, everybody knows who this guy is. He's written 10 books. He's given at least 10 talks in general conference. There was a bunch of talks that went around like in a circle on my mission where people would download it on a USB drive. They'd play it in their rooms, and then we could just share it like that from USB drives to other places. His talks were flying around. So I know he's a well-known guy. You probably could have gotten the same, I don't know what the word is, name recognition just as Tad Callister without the elder in there. My last point, which might be a spicy one, but I don't think it's a spicy one. Whenever people say like, well, Democrats do the same thing, I think, yeah, let's all like do whataboutism to one another and let's all hold each other to the same standard, please. a lot of people don't like whataboutism. They say like, stop doing that. But I'm like, let's just all like decide what our standard is as a country and then just hold everybody to that standard. That sounds nice.
That's a good point. I appreciate the take. Now, Rebecca, I posted this. I've got 2,000 views on that video, which is a lot for the Mormon News Roundup. That's nothing for CNN, but it's a lot. And this is a very controversial subject. And one of the reasons for it is that the church has expressed that it's supposed to be politically neutral. In my opinion, that has nothing whatsoever to do with theology or anything. It's the fact that the church itself is a 501(c)(3). It's a nonprofit. If the church were to endorse political candidates or political platforms, the 501(c) status could be called into question. That's why if you send out a general authority, I know he's only emeritus, that's what people are saying, but he's still a general authority in some capacity, whether he's emeritus or not, and you're giving an endorsement, in this case, to a political candidate, there's where the 501(c)(3) is called into question.
Yeah, I agree. They have to be very careful because ever since the whistleblower and the SEC, people are looking at them and saying, are you a church? Let's look for some evidence that you're not. And just having the word elder on the flyer, it doesn't matter if you're emeritus. It doesn't matter who you are. Elder means something. It means you have the weight of the church behind you. And I have to say, I'm having deja vu all over again because the same thing happened this summer. There was an event called Moroni Day, not Lincoln Day, but Moroni Day. And this was not political, but it was put on by an apologist organization for the church, which is called Book of Mormon Central. An invitation surfaced where it had sitting Elder Rasband as somebody that was going to speak at a fundraising dinner where it cost $250 a plate. And they were trying to raise $10 million to further this apologetic work. The very same excuses came out. Oh, that's an old template. We didn't mean to write that. We're going to take that down. That's a mistake. It's a fundraiser, but no funds will be raised. The same things were said about having Elder Rasband there. I just think that the church needs to be so careful. Don't send your apostles out to anything that has a political or a paid component to it. It just looks bad. And there's a lot of room for misunderstanding, if indeed it is a misunderstanding.
I take the Davis County Republicans at their word that they messed up and put elder on there when they didn't really need to. Like you said, Cody, Tad Callister, at least in Utah, is very well known as a prominent member of the church. Now, he's probably not very well known outside of the church. I think what we really need here is clarity from the church about the emeritus status. I think that would help out a great deal because I've heard many times before that emeritus general authorities continue to receive the normal general authority pay for the rest of their life. Emeritus means that starting at 70, that you are no longer do normal day-to-day functions and that you're essentially retired. If it is the case that Tad Callister is still a fully compensated employee of the church, even though he's emeritus, then that calls into question his affiliation and endorsing a political candidate. But if the emeritus general authorities, if all they receive is, let's just say all they receive is healthcare, then I have absolutely no problem with Tad Callister engaging in any political activity. In fact, I welcome it. Everybody should get involved with politics as much as possible. So it's really the clarity of the emeritus status and the compensation. It's the transparency in the church that's causing a lot of stumbling block issues, for me at least, in this particular issue. Cody, you want to take the last word on this one?
You know, if the church wants to influence the way that people vote, which I can imagine that every organization that has a self-interest, which is all organizations, would like people to vote a certain way because certain things are better for certain organizations, whatever. From my perspective, like looking at this from a much more philosophical lens, your politics are like the leaves of the tree and your religion is a lot more like the roots of the tree. So if people's core beliefs are they see themselves as Latter-day Saints, they see themselves as Christian, they're going to vote the way that the church would want them to vote anyways. Like the Venn diagram of people who see themselves as Mormon and also are going to vote the way the church wants them to vote is basically a circle. So I don't see why they really need to add any pressure, because politics really is way far downstream from culture and religion and you know, the way that people see themselves that way.
Now, if you could drop us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, you can find this podcast on there as well as the Mormonish podcast. If you can leave us a thumbs up, if you can drop us a subscription, we'd be very grateful for that. Our next article here is the crazy world of Tim Ballard. A new lawsuit against him has targeted the so-called Sound of Freedom hero and Angel Studios. Cody, can you bring us up to speed on what's happening in the crazy world of Tim Ballard?
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially, this just happened a couple days ago, but there's officially 5 lawsuits against Tim Ballard now. One of them is brought by a woman named Kelly Suarez, and she is Colombian. She was portrayed in the movie The Sound of Freedom, obviously. I almost said Underground Railroad. I don't know why. She was portrayed in The Sound of Freedom. She did not like the way that she was portrayed in The Sound of Freedom. She's coming at him with a civil charge saying, and she's also suing the distributor of Sound of Freedom, which I have it right here. I'm sorry, guys.
Angel Studios.
Angel Studios. Yes. And you don't need to cut any of this out. I mess up all the time and I let people know it. So it's fine. She doesn't like the way she was represented. She's suing him. She's also suing the distributor of the film. It's just a never ending thing with this guy. But that's the latest. There's a 5th lawsuit now. So a whole handful.
That is absolutely crazy. You know, his star has not seemed to diminish at all because he was just speaking at CPAC here a little while ago, even though he's been indicted in multiple jurisdictions. He's being sued left, right, and center. He's been kicked off of Operation Underground Railroad. The Republican Party still has a close affinity with him, Rebecca. It seems like he's going to be making more money after he left Operation Underground Railroad than when he was there all along.
Yeah, but he's kind of a Teflon Don. I feel like he's giving the Catholic prayer for Trump. He's one of the people invited to do that. I don't know if that means he's Catholic now or if he's just praying. I have no idea. But having seen the movie The Sound of Freedom, I finally brought myself to watch it. And I'm not surprised that she's suing. And I think other people might too, because it was such a portrayal of such a black and white in characterization. There's no nuance or gray area. You're either a bad beauty queen who's trafficking kids, or you're a good dad who's desperate and has been taken advantage of. There's nothing in the middle. And her actual name was used. I think there was a case where there was some poster of her right next to the poster of the movie. Anyway, she was outed and completely defamed. I would not be surprised to see other people coming forward and saying, you can't portray people like this. It's fabricated. We've been able to prove that almost everything in the movie is completely, if not completely, blatantly fabricated, misconstrued to a very high degree.
Yeah, we know that Tim Ballard used to rub shoulders with the Attorney General of the state of Utah, Sean Reyes, for a long period of time. In fact, basically, Sean Reyes was Tim Ballard's beard and covered him from potential legal actions, made sure that criminal charges wouldn't see the light of day. And, you know, Sean Reyes, the judge has ordered that the public will now be able to see the Utah Attorney General's work calendar. And of course, Sean Reyes is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I believe that he was a former bishop, and he's a very faithful member who has hobnobbed in the highest echelons of Mormonism. Let's see what's going on with his work calendar and what we can find out from this news article.
Our top story tonight, should you be able to see how elected officials spend their time on the clock working for the public?
A judge is weighing arguments this evening in KSL's public records fight here for Utah Attorney General Sean Reyes' work calendar.
KSL investigator Daniela Rivera reports on what happened today in court and when we'll know the judge's decision.
Good afternoon. Please be seated.
Attorneys representing Utah Attorney General Sean Reyes' office.
This case is not about secrecy, and it's not about keeping records from the public. It's about statutory interpretation.
And the KSL investigators.
And for more than a year now, the Attorney General has managed to drag this out with sort of morphing arguments in the hopes that it would become politically relevant. And we think the court should end that today.
Squaring off in court today over whether the public should get to see Reyes' work calendar. I ask you a quick question, a record the KSL investigators requested more than a year ago under GRAMA, Utah's public records law. It all comes down to this part of the law, exempting a daily calendar or other personal note for personal use. The AG's office says that or used to be an and till the legislature changed it in 2005. They argue that's important to how they see the case.
The statute now says or, a daily calendar or other personal note. Those things are disjunctive, so they're separate.
It's a semantic distraction. If the legislature had intended to put all daily calendars off limits, period, it would have said so, and it didn't.
Attorney David Ryman, representing the KSL investigators, argues a plain reading of the law would call for the release of Reyes' calendar because it's accessible to several public employees and used for public work. Judge Coram noted he's careful what he puts on his own work calendar.
Because my emails are subject to GRAMA. The computer system here is subject to GRAMA. And so aside from the occasional dentist appointment or something, I do not put things on that for this very, very reason.
Judge Coram did not make a decision today, saying he needed a day to consider the arguments.
My inclination is I do not think the statute is ambiguous.
Judge Coram has asked the parties to meet right back here tomorrow at the same time to deliver his decision from the bench.
I'm a big advocate for transparency, whether it's in church finances or whether it's in nonprofits or whether it's in public officials. We should, in my opinion, have the ability to scrutinize our public officials and what it is that they're doing. You know, the judge brings up a good point. Should there be some things that are off limits? I mean, there's got to be a level of privacy for government officials too.
I partially feel conflicted on this, even though I think that the case is kind of cut and dry. I would like to live in a world where I can have a few personal things on my work computer and my employer isn't invading my privacy like that. Like, that being said, I'm not putting huge time wasters on my work schedule. Maybe there's a dentist appointment that you can't forget about, so you throw it on there. I don't think that anyone in Utah would be upset to find out that Sean Reyes had a dentist appointment on January 2nd. I'm with you where whoever is saying that transparency is the best way to do it and whoever's willing to be the most transparent is probably the one who has the least to hide.
We need to be able to monitor what our government officials are doing. They're in the public sphere, they're public people, and we need to have a reasonable notion that what they're doing proper things during government time. I believe in transparency, and there's just something intrinsic about Latter-day Saints, though, that seems like they hate transparency, whether they work for the public or they work for the church. There's something very secretive about Latter-day Saints, and Sean Reyes is no exception.
Yeah, why would that be? Why would they not like or welcome transparency? I can't imagine. I'm so facetious. No, I think it comes down to expectation of privacy. And like the judge says, he has no expectation of privacy in that way because he understands that those things that are on his work computer can be subpoenaed. So I think that Sean Reyes, I mean, he's fought hard. This has been a year of trying to make sure that nothing on his calendar is seen. Is it because perhaps there's a week where he parachuted into Bermuda to rescue children? I mean, we don't know what's on that calendar. So we're going to find out, I think, now. But again, public official accountability and maybe just a lowered expectation of privacy in that role at that particular time.
I do wonder what is going to happen with Sean Reyes' calendar. And I wonder if it is made public, what we will see. And that's why I brought this Mormon News Roundup poll of the week. That's the best thumbnail I could get for you, Uber Mormon. How'd I do?
Who is that handsome guy on your computer screen? I've never seen him before.
He's a hunk.
So I do keep like kind of a small profile. Like my last name isn't really out there, so I'm not surprised that you couldn't find anything much better than that. I'm kind of proud of myself if I think about it. But I have also choked up against that wall where I need a quick photo of myself for a thumbnail, and I also don't have one.
What is the poll of the week here that goes along with the Mormon News Roundup poll here, Cody?
What are the top 10 things that you think we will find in Sean Reyes' calendar once it's made public?
Absolutely. Now, if you come on over to the Mormon News Roundup on Monday nights at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you can interact with your humble host during the poll. And let's run you through 10 options, Cody. How about number 1?
Appointment with Tom Harrison for brunch at Linehouse Cafe, followed by apostolic blessing.
I wouldn't be surprised to see that on Sean Reyes' calendar, knowing the type of folks that he hangs out with, Rebecca?
Oh, yes. And you can never have too many apostolic blessings, as we learned from Tim Ballard. So,
right. We know Tim Ballard has several of them, and I wouldn't be surprised how much he pals around with Sean Reyes that he didn't get involved with the party as well. Or how about number 2 there, Cody?
Sean and Tim's Southern Exposure research trip.
Rebecca, that's an inside Utah joke, if you know that joke.
I don't really know that joke. I'm just looking at the AI. Which one is supposed to be Tim and which one is supposed to be Sean Reyes?
It's Andrew Tate, right? I'm looking at Andrew Tate right now.
I asked that AI to give me a muscular guy, which is Tim Ballard, and a handsome politician, and heading to an exotic club. That's the best I could get for you. So,
which Grand Theft Auto is this? It looks fun.
Southern Exposure, I guess, for those. I guess that's too much of an inside joke. I'm not surprised.
No, I get it now. I wasn't thinking that. Yeah, I get it now.
Yes, gotcha. That's a Utah exotic dancing club. How about that?
It is. Yeah, I prefer American Bush. That's where. No.
Whoa.
That is a club though in Salt Lake.
Oh my goodness. Okay. We opened up a can of worms here. How about
breaking news? Appointment for matching Joder tattoos.
Oh, right. Yes. That could be good on his calendar. I don't know if he wants to keep that private. Maybe he should, but if it's on there, we definitely need to know about it.
My Spanish is rusty, but
it is.
It's what I think it is. Joder.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yikes.
Yep.
Yeah.
I know.
Yep.
We all learned a new word this year in the last couple of months. Everybody saw the picture. Everybody Googled it and went, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Or how about number 4?
The AG's fundraising dinners with Tad Callister.
We know Tad, he can bring home the bacon when it comes to these fundraisers. We'll probably see him hanging out with Sean Reyes, and definitely it'll be Tad Callister and not Elder Todd Callister, right?
I'm not going to attend if it doesn't say elder. I mean, where's the who's who?
For sure. How about number 5?
Joint massage. Wow, that's hard to say together. Massage session in Park City with Glenn Beck.
I believe, Rebecca, you're more of an expert on this than I am, but I believe those two also hang out with each other because they are super high up Mormons as well.
Yeah, I think that's true. And, what happens in Park City stays in Park City, I have heard. It's too elite for me to even cross the borders into Park City, but yeah.
I do like this picture of Glenn Beck. That's a perfect picture for this thumbnail. Or how about number 6?
Appointment with data scrubbing expert to delete unwanted cell phone data.
Yeah, that was back when Sean Reyes, he messed up and he contaminated a child pornography's crime scene, and the whole thing ended up being a fiasco because he got in there and took a bunch of pictures and messed everything up. So he's probably going to need to get that cell phone deleted. That's what I'm imagining. How about number 7?
Meeting with SEC regulators to coordinate the LDS Church's next fine.
That seems timely, Rebecca.
Yeah, it's pretty realistic, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think it could be more than meets the eye on that. Or how about number 8?
Multiple canceled meetings to investigate #Desnat.
Yeah, no, these are canceled meetings. That's what we're going to see because we know Sean Reyes, he's not coming after Desnat, and apparently the church isn't either.
No, they're just going to let it slide.
Yep. How about number 9?
2028 presidential candidacy exploration consult.
Yes, this is
maybe Tad could be his vice.
Bob, why not? Absolutely. This is my photoshopping skills there. That's it. You can see they're pretty meager. Or finally, we have number 10.
A coordination call with SCMC to keep an eye on C-list ex-Mormon podcasters.
Definitely, it's about time. Somebody's got to keep an eye on them. And I imagine Sean Reyes and the Strengthening Church Members Committee, I can't think of two better friends to keep an eye on that very dangerous community. What do you think, Rebecca?
Yeah, well, I'm guessing everybody has a file on them. It just depends on how thick it is. I don't know.
Yes, absolutely. And that does take us to our Mormon News Roundup poll of the week. What are the top 10 things you think you will find in Sean Reyes' calendar once it's made public? What do you think you're going to find here, Cody?
So I'm like a D-list or F-list ex-Mormon podcaster, but I would say they're gonna be coordinating to spy on probably you guys.
My personal definition of the C-list, B-list, and A-list is if you have less than 10,000 subscribers, you're a C-list. 10,000 to 100,000, you're B-list, and if you're A-list, you have 100,000 subscribers or more. So that puts us all squarely in the C-list category. Rebecca, what do you think we're going to find if we open up Sean Reyes' calendar?
Oh, I'm just hoping we're going to find the matching tattoos. I just think that would be so cute. So cute.
Yes, indeed. That'll be very nice to see there. That does take us to our final article here, which was a viral video that was brought up at the Missionary Training Center in Provo, Utah. I'm not sure if you guys saw this one, but this is really something different than when I went through the BYU Training Center in Provo. I'm not sure. Cody, did you go through BYU Provo or somewhere else?
I went through Peru. I went through Lima.
I got it. So I'm the only one who's actually been inside of this hallowed building then. So I'm giving you the scoop here. This was just leaked here just a couple of days ago. What in the world is going on in the MTC at BYU? Let's find out here. And the caption here is that the MTC hits different in 2024. That wasn't my experience here, guys.
No.
That was a very different than when I went through the MTC. Rebecca, you got a son on a mission. Did he talk about anything like this when he went through the BYU Training Center at Provo?
You know, I do know that I've heard anecdotally on different missions that there is sort of a Christianization of the missionary program in wearing Christian jewelry and carrying crosses and portraying themselves more as a youth minister. I have heard this anecdotally from many different areas. So I think it's just an attempt to reach people with language that they understand and know. And Christian music is a big part of this. There was a huge young adult conference last fall in a big venue in Salt Lake. And I happened to be out there at the same time. It was a Christian concert. It was phones lit up. It was praising with arms raised. It was kids wearing crosses. These are all things that when I was growing up, you would be grounded for weeks for doing. So it's a whole different church. I'm just glad that my parents, although living, can't drive and can't really find out that this is going on, because they would be rolling over in their graves. And I have to say very quickly that Cultural Hall, one of our favorite parody song creators, took that and made the Hosanna. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Yeah, very disturbing.
Yeah, so it kind of does actually kind of look like the Hosanna shout.
Yeah, except for someone has to be left shark. Remember that with the, I don't know if you remember that. That was great.
Somebody's always going the wrong direction.
Someone's always going the wrong direction. So yeah, I'm not surprised to see this, because I've seen this trend and podcasted about this trend for a while. And I think it has a bigger overarching purpose. And that is that Mormons need to align themselves with the Christian right. They have to survive. And so they're trying to make themselves more palatable, more familiar to the Christian right. Evangelicals, they're trying to do it. And I think there's a lot of ways that they can. Of course, when you drill down on the doctrine, there are some huge differences that there is no way around. But superficially, with music, singing, jewelry, crosses. For example, Easter. When I was growing up in my day, I sound really old, but you didn't celebrate Holy Week. You didn't celebrate Lent. You didn't do any of that. In fact, you looked down on people that did. Now we have from the pulpit at conference, make sure you make Easter special again, right? And they're telling you how to celebrate because we don't know. So there's a huge Christianization of Mormonism.
Yeah, Cody, I imagine that when you went through Peru that you didn't probably do something like that. Why is the church changing up its missionary training center activities?
They have to make it palatable at this point. It's the worst. It's amazing what you find entertaining. That's not a great song. That's not a great... I checked out the Truman Brothers after this so I could see what some of their stuff was like. And it's amazing when all worldly entertainment is cut away from you. It's amazing what you find good, because that's not good. There were a bunch of guys in the MTC when I was there. We would watch Mormon Messages, and Brandon Flowers, the singer from The Killers, had one. And in the background of his, while he was talking, was one of his new songs that he was releasing. And we would just watch that Mormon Message over and over again, because we were so starved for real music that we were just like, yes, okay, fine, give us some Killers.
This is their official videos here. The Day Dawn is breaking official video. We never went through anything like this back when I was in the MTC, that's for sure. I guess it's very important that we make sure that there's not one trumpet player on that's performing that has expressed even the slightest doubt in the church. Otherwise, they're out.
Right, at least it's not jazz.
That's right. Well, there's a reason they keep those brass instruments out of the church, right? It's only stringed and keyboard. I mean, there's something about that brass. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yep, that's for sure. Now, that does take us to our final segment, which is the Mormon News Roundup Joke of the Week. And I believe that you have that for us, Cody.
I do have it for us. And now I feel self-conscious that it's one you've heard before. So I'm going to give it to you. But I have a backup that is not Mormon related. That is a better joke, in my opinion, but I'll give you the Mormon one. How many Mormons does it take to change a light bulb? I'm sorry.
I don't know.
I have to ask.
Okay.
So it's actually a really hard answer to figure out because you have 15 people who have to vote on the change. And then you have to have a few people who say that there was never a change. And then you have to have apologists admit that there was a change, but it was not a doctrinal change. It was a policy change. Then you need a couple more apologists to explain that based on the definition that they're using of the word light bulb, there's actually never been a change at all. And then you need 16 million to pretend that any of this makes any sense.
Absolutely. All in favor, raise your hand, because that seems perfect. Very accurate. I hadn't heard that one before, Rebecca.
No, I haven't either. You did it. Right, you pulled it out.
Cool.
Very nice. The Mormon light bulb joke is the first one that you Google, but you don't get that result. So kudos to you.
That's an Uber Mormon special right there.
Yeah. And that reminds me, what are you working on? How can people get in touch with you? If you come on over to YouTube, what are you working on? And what will you see if you check out your YouTube channel?
I have really not done anything this year, to be 100% honest. There's a series that I would like to continue doing, which is me watching the Book of Mormon series that the church released. That's really fun, and I do it as a live stream, but my current life right now is babies, it's 60-hour work weeks, it's new businesses that I'm starting. So YouTube is just kind of like a reach out to me. You can email me at theubermormon@gmail.com, and I'll chat with anybody. But videos probably won't be coming, which is the worst thing you can say as a content creator. I'm literally, promoting nothing and on a great platform. But sorry, guys, just working on keeping my life together.
Absolutely no problem. And we wish you the very best. Rebecca, what do you have working on? What's going on with the Mormonish podcast, the Good Book Club, and all of the other things that you've got going on?
Oh my goodness. That makes me, hearing what the Uber Mormon said, want to take a break for sure. But I'm not going to. There's too many things going on. Absolutely. We have the Good Book Club, second Sunday of the month, 11 a.m. You can contact me for a Zoom link. Our book is Devil's Gate, the story of the Willie Martin Handcart Company. Oh my goodness, it's such a frustrating, infuriating book, but it's going to be a good time. The other thing we have going on is every Tuesday night, we release a live episode at 6 p.m. Mountain Time for Mormonish Podcast, and every Friday at 4. This Tuesday, which will be in just a day or so, we are doing an episode on Mormon spiritualism. How many of you have had people say, my dead grandfather appeared to me, or I just visited with my dead grandmother, right? We all have these stories. It's going to be a really interesting episode on Tuesday, coming up right in a couple days at 6 p.m. Mountain Time.
That sounds tremendous, both of you. I'd like to thank both of you for coming on to the Mormon News Roundup. If you'd like to make a donation to the Mormon News Roundup, you can come on over to our Patreon. We'd be very grateful for that. Now, as far as the things that I'm working on, we've got the Mormon Movie Reviews, which is every Monday night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you come on over to YouTube, you can watch an old LDS classic with us. And this one is the Children of Promise video. Have either of you watched the Children of Promise released in 1980? This is an obscure Mormon classic.
I think I remember this one.
This one is really remarkable because it is quite possibly the most racist movie that the church, it's not officially produced by the church, but it is possibly the most racist church affiliated. It's a film strip that has ever been released. It is really something to behold. If you've never watched The Children of Promise, it is really, really unbelievable. So I want to thank you so much for coming on the Mormon News Roundup. I want to give a shout out to Weird Alma on bandcamp.com for this episode's music. And remember,
no unhallowed hand can stop this podcast from progressing.
When it comes to nicknames of the church, such as LDS Church, the Mormon Church, to remove the Lord's name from the Lord's church is a major victory for Satan.
Satan.